Welcome to the SHN Sports High School Gridiron podcast, showcasing Central Texas high school football. And now, here's your host, Rob Hipp. Good evening and welcome to the SHN Sports High School Gridiron Weekly podcast. I'm Rob Hipp, Director of Operations with SHN Sports. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic program on cue for tonight here in our inaugural podcast. We've got Rick Epstein, a guest tonight, our special guest of the week here with IHSFAN. We'll be talking to him. Chuck Kracy from the Leander Lions is in the house, and my broadcast partner, Matt Loeschman. Well, we'll just go ahead and dig right into this. Again, welcome to the podcast. And, Chuck, we'll go ahead and chat with you first. Talking about this new season, man, up and coming. I can't believe that high school football is already upon us. Now, Chuck, you've been with Leander. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chuck, you've been out in Leander for a long time. You guys in Leander seeking your first winning season since 2012. Where the Lions finished in second place, I believe, behind Powerhouse Cedar Park. This was back in 5A. The Lions that year, of course, went 2-8 overall, 1-5 and 25-6A last year. Chuck, where has Leander tried to build this offseason to prepare for the 2017 campaign?
Well, the short answer is the weight room, and the guys really did focus on strength and conditioning over the summer, and I saw drastic improvement in that area. They brought in the defensive coordinator, Coach Robertson, to lead the weightlifting program there, and it really paid off. I've seen guys just really jump. You know, the Lions have had a lot of tough luck over the last several years, and even though they didn't have winning records the last 2 years, 2 years ago they were 3-8, 2-4, or 2-5 in district. And missed the playoffs in a 2-point loss to Dripping Springs to end the season. And just like last year, losing to Lehman by 2 points, winning that game would have put them in postseason play, despite the record would have been 3-7 at that point. So,
we're talking again about
it's all about preparing yourself and being ready because every school in this area is good and every team in this district is good.
Well, I think I read it in Rick's magazine, an IHSFAN magazine. We'll hear more about that a little bit later. I was reading an article in his magazine, and it's like you guys in Leander are playing a playoff team every single game. And that kind of moves me on to my next question here. 25-6A, an extremely tough division, as everyone knows, perhaps the toughest in the state, facing powerhouse opponents such as the champions Lake Travis and Westlake. Where does Leander, Chuck, have to be to compete with these teams?
Well, the first and foremost, they can't go into those games just in awe of the teams they're playing and essentially lose the game before you even kick the ball off. Some teams come up against Lake Travis and the Cedar Parks of the world, the Westlakes of the world, and they're a little intimidated. That's where the Lions need to just go in, compete play by play, avoid the mistakes and penalties that have really plagued them over the last couple of years. Pre-snap fouls, turnovers. Even when the Lions were 0-10 a few years ago, they lost 10 of those games by less than 12 points. So, they were competitive, but, they got to get over that hump. And I think this class is strong enough and focused enough. The only problem they're going to run into is depth. And if they can avoid any catastrophic injuries, they should be a very competitive team in this district. So you get past Westlake, you get past Lake Travis, you're going to give them their due, but you should compete with them, obviously. Vandergrift's going to have a tough defense. Their offense has been down last year and a little bit this year. Vista has a four-year starter, and he's a phenomenal talent. But beyond him offensively and their returning quarterback, Towdy, they don't have a whole lot of depth. They got Joe Goodwin at running back. But then you throw in Haynes has a huge offensive line. They're expected to do a lot. Lehman brought in a new coaching staff, and, they're just a tough team. And when you play a team that's a playoff team every week, if you can find your way into the playoffs, if the Lions can find themselves in a similar position as they've been in the last couple of years, if they can get over that hump and get into the postseason, then they can make a run because they've played experienced teams throughout the year.
Well, Chuck, you've got a son playing center, Jeremy Kracy. I know we don't want to single out any one player, but I had to talk about him. He's your son. Can you talk a little bit about Jeremy as well as some of the other key players that we should keep an eye on this season for the Leander Lions?
Sure. I'll be real brief with Jeremy because he'd prefer that I talk about his teammates, but he's smart, strong, and handsome, just like his old man. So I got to give him credit for that. But no, he's a good kid, and he's really become a leader here in the program. There's some really good players here at Leander, and it's you've got a 3-year returning starter on defense with Alex Hensley. He's two-time all-district linebacker. You've got a 3-year returning starter on offense, Dalton Flowers, at wide receiver. Both those guys are probably going to play both ways along with Jeremy and Jake Egglesey. You've got I mentioned the weight program earlier. He was a sophomore last year. Junior quarterback Rashad Carter's put on about 15 pounds of muscle, didn't lose his step in his speed, and so that should make a difference for him. They've got several sophomores that should contribute at skill positions, but I think you're going to see if they can avoid injury on the O-line, they've got 2 bookend tackles, real big kids, Tyler Dillard and Josh Long. I think you'll see that the Lions will be able to move the ball offensively, retain possession of it, keep the other team's offense off the field. Tyler Dillard himself is summer like crazy, and he's just really figuring out how to be a great run blocking tackle. And he's so big, that makes pass blocking a lot easier. Defensively, they've got 2 returning secondary guys, Noah King, Michael Jorgensen. The D-line is probably the biggest sufferer of losing talent to graduation. But look for Frankie Cortez to make a big impact there. He played quite a bit in relief last season, and when he's in the game, he just has a nose for the ball. He's not super big, he's not super fast, but he's a talented football player, and expect to see his name a lot this year.
Awesome. Well, Rick, hey, I know that you've published some items out there on social media regarding Leander. Anything that you'd like to chime in about the Leander Lions this season, Rick?
Yeah, Coach Smith is one of the most passionate coaches there is. They have such great support from their entire community. It's always a pleasure to go out there, and they are turning the corner. They had a winless season just a few years ago, and the last year they went into the last game of the season with a chance to make the playoffs. So Coach Smith's got them on the right track. He comes from a winning program, so they're on the right track.
Awesome. Well, Chuck, any last comments briefly you'd like to mention? Anything out there for the Leander Lion Nation you'd like to give a shout-out to, or any other final comments?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks, first of all, to you guys at SHN Sports. You've been a great partner for the Leander Lions over the last several years. And, folks, do what you can to support the businesses that advertise through SHN and those that advertise directly through whatever school that you are affiliated with. If it's Leander, those businesses. But those businesses that are buying advertising on SHN and buying sponsorships for schools directly are a big part of why Texas high school football is so successful. Absolutely. And you should support those businesses.
Absolutely. Well, once again, Chuck Kracy, the play-by-play voice of the Leander Lions. You can catch him this season here on the SHNSports.com broadcast network. Chuck, if you'd like to stick around with us through the remainder of the podcast, feel free to.
Okay, I will.
We've got a few things that we'll keep talking about here. Well,
I'll hang out and listen, and if you need me, just holler.
All right, sounds good. Well, folks, it's now my honor to introduce my broadcast partner from the Georgetown Eagles, color analyst Matt Loeschman. Matt, you and I have got great chemistry together. It's been an honor to work with you the past 3 years since we started SHN. I'll let you do most of the talking, Matt. You know, there's been some staff changes at Georgetown. Coach Dean, of course, still leading the helms there for the Georgetown Eagles. But can you tell us about Georgetown this season and what we can expect as the season progresses for the Georgetown Eagles?
Yeah, Rob, really looking forward to it. So Georgetown 8-3 last year and lost the first round of the playoffs to Brenham in a tough defeat at the end of the game there on a last-second field goal. I think what Georgetown's looking for this year is to just make further steps in the playoffs. You know, a state finalist in 2012 and a perennial playoff team, but the Eagles looking for more playoff success. And when we talked to Coach Dean at the coaching conference in Houston about a month ago, we talked to him about several things. And like you mentioned, Rob, the coaching shuffle starting off, they lost Coach Griffin. Chuck Griffin went to moved on to the Dallas area, and they promoted Ricky Beatty, so he'll be a co-offensive coordinator. Tim Nickey went back to his alma mater at Cedar Park, so they promoted Chris Staten to that position, defensive line coach. And then two new hires for the Eagles, Scott Dunovit from Vandegrift, as well as Jeffrey Thompson from Stephenville. So a few changes on the sidelines for the Eagles that the players will have to get used to. But if we look at both sides of the ball, Rob, and guys, Cooper Bell will be the quarterback this year for Georgetown, a senior, and big shoes to fill. I know that Chandler Herman, one of the most underrated quarterbacks the last couple of years. I know, Rick, we truly appreciate how you propped up Chandler on different venues over the last couple of years, and very deserved. But I felt still a very underrated quarterback, and Cooper steps into that role having played one varsity game last year against Cedar Creek when he was able to account for 6 touchdowns in his lone varsity start. Now, granted, that's not against great competition, but Cooper, he killed it in that game, and then he excelled in summer 7-on-7 this year as well. He's put on more muscle. He was a basketball player as well in the last season. So we're going to see Cooper Bell lead the offense, and the coaches are very high on him. In the backfield, Eric Anderson returns after a great season splitting time with Cade Sill. This season, Eric will be the main man back there in the backfield, and had a lot of touchdowns last year despite splitting the time with Cade. And a couple other guys, Roland Moreno and Xavier Torres, younger players that Georgetown fans may not have heard of before, but guys that are going to be counted on to spell Eric when Eric needs a breather there in the backfield. Now, we all know that Bo Corrales is, on track to play at North Carolina in his freshman year. The guy has just hit the weight room and become a monster. He looks like he's about 220 now, and the coaches there at North Carolina really high on Bo. So the cupboard is not bare at wide receiver with Caden Leggett coming back for his senior year. Caden, 53 catches, 9 touchdowns last year, and nearly 1,000 yards receiving. He's going to be the main weapon there that Cooper Bell will be hooking up with from a passing standpoint. Beyond that, Nick Crombie will be playing a wide receiver / tight end / H-back role, and he's really bulked up. We heard from Coach Dean to about 215 pounds in the offseason. Last year, Nick was a great second option or second or third option for Chandler, but Nick was really skinny, and apparently this year he's changed that to a situation where he's really put on a lot of a good muscle there. Cole Posey, Noah Drum, Dylan Cahill, other guys you'll see at wide receiver. Now, the offensive line's a bit of a question. Talon Zero returns. He's the most experienced returning offensive lineman. Kevin Espinosa comes back after getting a lot of playing time last year. Some other guys coming back as well, but that's kind of an unproven area there for Georgetown is the offensive line, and it'll be important for them to play well to protect Cooper and to open some holes for Eric Anderson. On the other side of the ball, on defense, the defensive line, the only returner is A.J. Garcia, so they're going to have to find some pass rush and run stopping there. Tyler Solomon has moved over from the offensive side of the ball to sort of shore up the defensive line. We've seen that happen before for Georgetown successfully in the past, so they're trying to do that again with the offensive guy changing over to defense. The strength of the defense, Rob, is the linebacking core. Brandon Hawkins, just all over the field. He's a monster out there. He's already committed to Boise State. He's the leader of the linebacking core, over 100 tackles last year, an all-area player, all-district player, and he's flanked out there by Kyle Urbanowski and Drew Barfield. So tons of experience on the linebacking core coming back for the Eagles, and that's going to be the strength of the defense. And back there in the defensive backfield, it looks pretty good experience-wise with Trace Glanville and Paul Salcedo coming back, both being Trace is a 2-year varsity starter, and Paul Salcedo played the entire year, started all last year. Now they'll be joined back there by a newcomer, Eli Gray, who moved in from out of state, as well as Gage Leggett, who is Caden's little brother. We should see him back there at defensive back as well. So those are your main guys to look for. Of course, kicker, we heard the younger brother of All-State, Luis Diaz, is going to step in there and do the job at kicker for Georgetown, and that's been a real strength for them the last couple of years, with Luis being a great player who's moved on to play college football. When you look at 19-5A, guys, we know that, it starts and ends with Cedar Park. Coach Absick over there, they're always a powerhouse, always a contender to win the whole thing. So you would expect them to be at the top of the district again. Hutto, who was so young last year, those Hippos came out of the water, and, this year they're going to be a force, is what Coach Dean told us. He expects them to be very much in the playoff hunt. With Chase Griffin at quarterback, now a junior, he's going to be a great quarterback for them. I expect Georgetown to be right around there, second or third, and be in that playoff hunt. They should return to the playoffs, and then it gets a little dicey when you think of that fourth spot. Maybe Conley. We'll have to see what happens there. But, for Georgetown, I think they'll be back in the playoffs, Rob, and I actually think we'll win that first game against Brewer, and then week 2, we come back and we face Hayes on a Thursday night, and I think, Rick, you can agree Hayes is going to be a better team this year, although they're going to be, they're in the kind of the district of death.
They got a big old offensive line.
Right.
Well, Matt, as always, appreciate your insight. My broadcast partner, color analyst Matt Loeschman for the Georgetown Eagles, and wanted to move things right along here. And just wanted to say it's my honor and special privilege to introduce our guest here on the Week 1 podcast of the SHN Sports High School Gridiron Weekly podcast. A special guest this evening, Rick Epstein. Rick has been involved in Texas high school football for quite some time, previously working with many organizations such as IMG, Spurs Sports and Entertainment, and, of course, Dave Campbell's Texas football, and then taking a leap of faith in January 2015 to fulfill a dream since he had, when he was young, to build a business. And that led to IHSFAN, which stands for I'm a High School Fan. Rick, hey, man, glad to have you on. Just wanted to hear what you have to say, kind of tell your story, and talk a little bit about IHSFAN, and let us know how things are going with what you're doing there with IHSFAN, Rick.
Rob, thanks for having me. Matt, always a pleasure. And Mr. Kracy, you're doing a great job out there at Leander. Yeah, IHSFAN, I had a dream while I spent 6 years with the great Dave Campbell's Texas football media brand and IMG. And I always thought, Austin was big enough to support something all by itself. We're the 11th largest city in the United States. We've got such great football. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, I'm looking on I was at Reliant Stadium for the last 3 championship games of the year. There were 6 teams playing, and 3 of them were from Austin.
Wow.
So we've got great football. I decided, you know what? Let's take a leap, and we started IHSFAN, and we have not looked back. This is our 3rd publication, and we do a top 10 team, which I think has really grown into something that no one knew about, and now players are really wanting to be recognized. We've had some great ones. Believe it or not, in our 3 magazines, Georgetown has featured a player each of the 3 years. So right. As Matt was going through, Bo Corrales, he was on last year, and we had Ben Purcell, big offensive lineman in year 1.
Well, Rick, we'll have to try to continue that this season. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, well, of course, Caden Leggett is a member of the IHSFAN Top 10 team. He is going to have a huge year as he will move into that number 1 receiver role that Bo Corrales cordially left for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rick, a fantastic publication with IHSFAN, a lot of in-depth information in there. I know this season, Mike Barnes from KVUE Television, Sean Clinch, a friend of SHN as well, was in there. Really nice to see their articles, doing a fantastic job with that publication here in year number 3. But here in this third year, Rick, I wanted to move on and talk about this. You're adding another layer, as Matt likes to call it, SHN. We talk about adding layers. You've done the same with IHSFAN with an addition of a weekly radio show, which I believe is titled Under the Lights on 104.9 FM, The Horn. Can you please tell us a little bit more about the show, and also Jeff Powers on that show with you? We'd like to hear more about that and what you're doing with Under the Lights.
Absolutely. And by the way, fans, you can get your free copy of the magazine. We do a print and digital version. If you go to our Twitter at IHSFAN, you can just click a link and you'll get the magazine right on your phone for absolutely free. So do that. But yeah, we are so excited. Last year, I had a lot of fun on Friday mornings. 104.9 The Horn had their high school spotlight show, and they asked me to come on and give a couple predictions, 5 or 10 minutes on their Friday show where I did a couple predictions, and I really had a lot of fun. We formed a good relationship, and Aaron Hogan and the folks over at 104.9 The Horn pulled me in over the summer and said, "Hey, do you think you could do an hour show for us?" And of course, I said yes, because that's always been a dream of mine. I've always had a dream to be in radio. Matter of fact, if I had it to do all over again, I would have gone that route. But at age 51, I finally realized my dream. And we have a radio show called Under the Lights, which many SHN sports fans will remember. We did a podcast last year
Absolutely.
for SHN called Under the Lights. That was a lot of fun. And that really set my mind in motion on doing something like this. And we had a lot of fun last year. And this year, my co-host, Jeff Power, who's been in Austin for 20 years, used to be with KI, and then, of course, the news director for News 8 Austin. We had our first show last week. Coach Tim Smith and Coach Anthony Wood were our first guests ever. And we had a lot of fun. And we'll be there every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m., only talking about Austin area football. We're not going to be talking recruiting. We're not going to be talking about really the state of Texas until come playoff times, only shining the spotlight on the 5A, 6A, and even some private schools in the Austin area.
Well, Rick, I think you guys have found a great niche, and, of course, there with Jeff Power and the fine folks at 104.9, a great show. Got to listen in last week, a fantastic job, and looking forward to hearing more about what's going on in the Austin landscape. Again, just a big honor to have you guys there putting that show on, and especially on a Wednesday night too. It's great. It's kind of midweek. Sometimes people are kind of waiting for Friday, but, man, what a great way to start that Friday Night Lights on Wednesday with y'all's show, Rick.
Yeah, we're going to have a couple great segments each week, and we thought Wednesday was the perfect game. Before you head out to your game on Thursday or Friday, come on in and listen to don't miss this show. But one of our segments is Coach Speak. We'll bring a different coach on each week. This week's guest is Coach Jeff Rhodes. He's the Anderson Trojan coach, and they'll be playing in the Taco Shack Bowl. But I've already got all the way through November a different coach each week. We have an Ask a Doc segment with Austin Regional Clinic, where a different orthopedist each week will talk about a football-related issue. So we got a lot going on each show.
Awesome, Rick. Well, at this time, Chuck Kracy, do you have a question to ask Rick about what he's doing with IHSFAN or Under the Lights?
Well, not really a question. I would like to say I attended that podcast he mentioned from last week, and the location is excellent as well. Nothing wrong with sweet tea and Bush's tenders and gravy to go along with high school football conversation. So I think it is something that, yeah, you can tune in, but attending a podcast is also a whole lot of fun as well. And we really enjoyed it. And I can see myself going a few times throughout this season.
Yeah, we'll be out on location at Bush's on 620 near Lakeline Mall 3 more times this season. The rest of our 18 shows will be in studio, but we'll be out there next September 13th, and Coach Carl Absek will be our guest of the Cedar Park Timberwolves.
That place will be packed, I'm sure.
Awesome. Matt, any questions from you for Rick before we move on?
Rick, I was going to say, to get a show on like that, you've got to have power, and in this case, it's Jeff Power. So, I mean, what's it like to work with a guy like that who's got such knowledge and so well respected? I really thought the chemistry between you guys was great in the first show.
Well, I appreciate that. Jeff has been a longtime friend of mine, and he's worked with Fox Sports. He did the Dave Campbell's Texas football show for 6 years, and so he knows so much. And he brings so much to the table, and he's a good friend. I'm learning a lot from him, and I do think that we're going to have some good chemistry of what we both bring to the table. He's got some great documentaries. If you go to Jeff Power TV, he did a documentary most recently on Odessa Permian that ran on Fox Sports, and he also has done them on Cuero and Lake Travis. So I would encourage you to get onto his website and look at some of these fine documentaries.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we can get Jeff on the SHN Gridiron podcast here one week to talk more about that. That would be exciting. Well, Rick, hey, we appreciate having you on as our guest this week. I thought it would be hard to find someone better to launch here on this first week. I know that you've been an icon in the Austin area for football, living in the area for a long time. You've got a lot of knowledge about Austin area football, so we sincerely appreciate it. Now, talking though, Rick, I'm not going to let you off the hook just yet because we got to ask you this. This is the annual Taco Shack Bowl that's going to be happening. SHN will have that game on Thursday night, but there's going to be other games as well, but we're really going to highlight that Taco Shack Bowl. Rick, we did this when you had your podcast, but I'm just going to ask you, just for fun, who's your pick in this year's Taco Shack Bowl?
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you my pick. But before I do, I want to give a shout-out to you and all the folks at SHN. You guys do so many games each year. It's so great for folks to be able to watch it on their phones or even come home after the game and rewatch it. You're creating memories for thousands of people, and you're doing it with a quality production. And I definitely applaud everything that SHN Sports is doing, not only with football, but all the sports you do. But so congratulations on that. But with regards to my prediction, look, last year, McCallum goes into the locker room, 27-0 against Anderson. And we thought it was a laugher. Anderson comes out and scores 21 straight points, and all of a sudden it's 27-21 with a chance to blow a 27-point lead. McCallum did hang on. I think McCallum will be one of the star-studded schools in the district. They returned 17 players, Rob, and off a team that went 10-3 and deep into the playoffs. I think they will win the 16th annual Taco Shack Bowl by the score of 35-13.
Hey, I like the prediction, Rick. And I'm calling on that game is going to be Brad Tillery and Steven Stunn here with SHN. Steven is an alum of McCallum, and we're also blessed and honored to have Abby Haig now, who's joining us. She'll be doing some sideline reporting down there for us as well. So, well, Rick, man, we appreciate you. Thank you for your kind comments. You're a friend of SHN, and we really appreciate everything that you do for the Austin area. I know that this won't be the last time we'll have you on. There's plenty of opportunities, and we definitely want to include you in a lot of what we do here with these podcasts as the season progresses. So, again, Rick, thanks a million for being with us tonight. Again, folks, IHSFAN, check them out on Twitter at IHSFAN, and you can also listen to the show Under the Lights every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. with Rick Epstein and Jeff Power on 104.9. Gentlemen, anything else you'd like to close out before we sign off here tonight?
I'm just ready to kick the footballs off and get this thing underway.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Well, Matt, great to have you as well. Chuck Kracy, we appreciate you. Looking forward to the calls this season. And it's going to be an exciting season here in the Austin, Texas area. Again, thanks to all of our guests. Rick, we really do appreciate you. Matt, thanks for being on. And Chuck, we'll catch you guys next week on SHN Sports here for our kickoff of the SHN